Hey guys, tonight we tumble backward in time to the age of African giant towering baobab trees and ancient cities hidden by dust, myth, and layers of time itself. Picture yourself squinting against the red gold sun, sand stuck at the edges of your mouth, every step crunching through the savanna. There's a distant shimmer at the edge of your sight-crumbling stone towers, half swallowed by roots, the song of old wind in unfamiliar streets. But just a reality check, you probably wouldn't make it far. If the malaria doesn't get you, there's always the army ants. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far our journeys go. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step beyond the wrappings of your own century, feeling the veil thin and the muggy heat seep into your bones. The oldest city we'll visit tonight is older than Rome, older than Paris. Your shoes puff up red dust as you hike, and ever mind that you're technically trespassing on a legend. Welcome to the ancient city of Kerma, along the Nile in what is now Sudan. It's a place so old, so mysterious, that even most history teachers forget to name it. Kerma rises out of time's crocodile-thick riverbanks about 50 years ago. The Nile isn't just a pretty location here, it's life itself. The city's people, the Kushites, laid out their homes in thick mud brick, centered around a ginormous structure called the Western Dafufa. No, not a giant chocolate bar, a massive, multi-story temple with walls so thick you could practically hold a dance party atop them. Don't get too cocky, though. Its rooms once glowed with candle smoke and baked frog mummies offered to mysterious gods. By the time Egypt's pyramids glinted under the desert sun, Kerma was thumping with life. Imagine narrow alleys, sun-baked children darting past market stalls, duck, someone's goat, just escaped, and priests slathering on crocodile dung as SPF. That's not a joke. Crocodile dung really was an ancient cosmetic, and I guess sometimes even divine protection has an aroma. Historians agree that Kerma was a dominant force, often wrestling with pharaohs up north. They traded obsidian, ivory, gold, and, you guessed, exotic animal skins for tin and luxury ceramics. Sometimes, the clash turned bloody. Colonial Egyptian texts loved to paint the Kushites as wild. But guess what? Recently uncovered tombs show actual Egyptian soldiers serving in Kushite armies. Who's civilizing whom now? Archaeologists still find human sacrifices, but experts bicker fiercely. Was this proof of tyranny, religious devotion, or just the world's most awkward intern program? Some skeletons are decked out in jewelry, leaving us to wonder if it was a privilege, not a punishment. Fringe archaeologists? They spin tales of a lost technology, maybe even magic. Nobody can prove it, but a few old legends insist Kerma's priests could command the river to rise. Was it clever irrigation, or something more? Tonight's story won't always follow the tourist maps. Sometimes you'll squeeze through a collapsed wall, the dust all up your sleeves, to find a little boy scraping geometric patterns in the dirt. Those are echoes of Kerma's lost script. It's a riddle that still stumps the best minds. How did these people organize such a sprawling city with barely a written language? Are those symbols meant for the living, or for the gods across the Nile? So you wander, half terrified a crocodile-shaped god will leap from the shadows. Instead, moonlight slices across broken pottery. A voice calls out in a language nobody living has ever heard, and you realize you're already part of the legend. We have so many cities to explore, but tonight, the journey starts where river meets myth, and every stone might hide a secret that's not quite ready to sleep. You brush the sand off your feet, leaving Kerma's burnt orange banks behind. Your next trek takes you overland, swaying with the camels, a warm, dry breeze tugging at your clothes as stars pile overhead. It's just you, the wider savanna, and a stretch of green on the horizon that curls up into a sleepy corner of the Sahara. There lies Janae, an ancient city that looks like a sandcastle crafted by a superhuman toddler after a rainy season. History books tell you Janae flourished by the 3rd century BCE, but archaeologist spades suggest people settled here as early as 250 BCE, building mud brick structures that have outlasted entire empires. What sets Janae apart today? Picture the Great Muscoliterally, the world's largest mud building, a hulking form studded with wooden scaffolding that sticks out like a porcupine on a bad hair day. Every year, thousands gather for a citywide festival to apply a fresh layer of mud, turning construction into a full-on community paintball fight with buckets instead of brushes. Your path winds past riverside fishmongers pounding millet for supper, kids hopping from one dusty stoop to another. Janae's always been a magnet for people. Its position near the Niger River made it a hub for traders, scholars, and holy men. You sidestep a donkey stubbornly refusing to budge, because some things never change, and smell the faint scent of spice, dried fish, and sweat. Heard of Timbuktu? A merchant calls over. Janae made her. This town was the mother of markets. Mainstream historians agree. Janae's real golden age flourished between the 12th and 16th centuries. It served as the urban heartbeat for gold, salt, and manuscripts so prized. Some legends claim their authors worked by moonlight and drank nothing but goat's milk for wisdom. The wisdom part is still up for debate. Beyond trade, Janae was all about learning, and its early mosques doubled as universities. Here, the scent of ink mingled with incense, and boys huddled over wooden writing tablets, copying texts in elegant Arabic scripts. What they didn't tell you in school? Every once in a while, someone would slip a poem or political cartoon right into the margins. There's even a centuries-old manuscript with a caricature of a frowning imam, complete with suspiciously large ears. But as you cut deeper into Janae's maze, you stumble into glimmering puddles left by a hard rain, and notice the ancient wellstone rimmed, perfectly cool, and still in use. Researchers debate whether Janae's water systems were borrowed from Egypt, invented solo, or simply lucked out with the groundwater. One quirky theory? City elders claim the founders hired hippos to churn out the first canals. If you can picture a team of trainee hippos wearing tiny construction hats, you're not alone. The city itself is littered with pottery shards, some showing traces of blue glaze, a style still argued over Berber origin or unique to the city's ancient women potters. Fringe archaeologists insist there's a long-lost royal quarter buried beneath the busy marketplace. But since no one's willing to temporarily evict all the goats, we'll never know for sure. So as the sun dips down, flickering over the mosque's spiky silhouette, you pause to listen. Is that singing, or just the wind? You smell the promise of storms, see children herding goats past half-collapsed city walls, and you can't help but wonder who will keep Janae's secrets alive for the next 2,000 years. If you spot a tiny figurine staring up from the mud, gently pocket it. It might be the storyteller's job next. And you never know where a legend ends up when the city's bones are this old. Your dream now shifts, tugged forward by the river's winding call, as you drift from Janae northward to the city everyone has heard of but no one really believes in, fabled Timbuktu. On the edge of the Sahara, it rises out of the pale dust like a mirage for weary travelers who'd given up hope of ever seeing anything that wasn't sand or camel spit. You approach on foot, or let's be honest, you stagger, because even the toughest nomads lose their sense of humor here. The heat sits on your shoulders like a blanket straight out of a sauna, and you half expect to see Indiana Jones waving you along. Nobody's sure exactly who named this place, although the favorite version involves a woman named Buktu and her Wella's sort of ancient water cooler legend that's stuck for 8 centuries. Like, Imagine your local Starbucks named after your grandma's backyard shed. Timbuktu's history explodes into life around the 12th century, when salt, gold, and ideas course through the city like Instagram memes gone viral. Caravan bells jangle in the distance, carrying trader sand, sometimes scholars hungry for news from the Mediterranean. The city's 3 great mud-brick mosques sparkle beneath the harsh sun, reminders that this was Africa's heartbeat of learning long after much of Europe was bumbling through the Dark Ages. Historians agree, the Sankore Madrasa made Timbuktu the Harvard of its age. Students traveled for weeks to copy rare manuscripts, discuss astronomy, and occasionally sneak in a doodle or two involving camels in funny hats. A mainstream fact, at its peak, the libraries of Timbuktu held as many as 700 books more than most medieval European cities could dream of. But you spot a furtive figure hurrying along the city's alleyways, clutching a small wrapped bundle. Manuscript smugglers, real-life heroes, have preserved thousands of texts from fire, flood, and colonial looting. One fringe rumor whispers that hidden vaults still rest beneath unmarked home-timeless secrets, just waiting for a keen eye and a brave heart, or a determined child with a stick. There's the enduring legend of salt bricks traded ounce for gold, a tale possibly embellished by European writers desperate to make North Africa seem more mysterious than it was. Scholars quibble. Was gold actually that plentiful? Or did the city's merchants simply excel at telling tall tales to confuse foreign buyers? Either way, the exaggeration works today. People think you can scoop coins out of Timbuktu's gutters. Pro tip, do not try this. You'll just get sand in your shoes. As shadows pool along the winding streets, you see the intricate woodwork on the door signs of wealth and a tradition of craftsmanship that could outlast anyone's sandcastle. At dusk, the air is thick with the smell of mint tea, fried millet cakes, and the warm, musty tang of camel hide. You brush a finger across a stone with faded calligraphy, maybe a prayer, or perhaps a recipe for the city's best roast mutton. But beneath all this lies a different history. Timbuktu wasn't always peaceful. It was conquered by invaders from Morocco in the 16th century, and city walls rose, fell, and rose again. Historians still argue whether the Moroccan invasion sparked a true decline or merely forced the city to go incognito. But it's clear Timbuktu's real treasure is invisible written words, whispered memories, and knowledge guarded by generations who wouldn't let the sand swallow their story. If you find yourself lingering on Timbuktu's rooftops, don't be surprised if you see the gleam of a hidden tome, the ripple of a passing shadow, or hear a soft laugh echo from a classroom where the world's best stargazers once studied. History never truly leaves, and in this city especially, you might just end up with more questions than answers. Maybe that's what makes it magical, even after the last trader has vanished over the dusty horizon. Your steps are lighter now, but the air feels heavier as you push south, deeper into the heart of forest and grassland towards the city of Ife, the source of the Yoruba people, the place where the ancient gods supposedly touched down for the world's very first party. Ife doesn't look like a lost city in the storybooks. Instead, ancient earth walls curl through the brush, and the ground beneath your feet is restless with secrets. This city's origins reach back to the 11th century CE, when city walls rose out of pink-tinged clay and the population sparked with creative genius. Ife became famous as the epicenter of a civilization that excelled in art, particularly its mysterious bronze and terracotta heads. Imagine stumbling over a basketball-sized head, perfectly symmetrical, so lifelike you swear it might blink. Instead, you notice intricate scarification patterns and a haunting, almost smug smile that fit right at a school talent show. Mainstream scholars agree these works demonstrate a level of craftsmanship that still astounds the world. Some have straight up called them the most beautiful portrait sculptures ever crafted. You would find artisans hunched over cast-offs, melting down copper and bronze using ancient lost wax techniques long before anyone in Europe had mastered them. The process? Wrap a clay core with wax, sculpt your face, cover with more clay, then fire it up. The wax melts, the bronze replaces it, and poof, indestructible beauty. But here's your fringe tidbit. For decades, European archaeologists thought these heads were so advanced they couldn't possibly be African. Some insisted aliens or mysterious visitors taught the Yorubano joke. Today, we know better, but the old debates are good for a chuckle and a groan. If you weave through Ife's narrow paths at dusk, you might feel the pulse of drumsits, a city alive with ritual. Offerings of yams, palm oil, and feathers still appear at ancient altars guarded by wizened priests. Some locals say the old gods still walk here, disguised as travelers, laughing at selfies snapped on smartphones under century-old trees. Go on, touch the city wall. Some are more than 10 meters thick, sunk deep with ancient ditch and bank defenses. Historians debate whether the city's first walls protected from raiders, honored sacred space, or just marked the boundaries where men stopped and gods began. Sometime in the 14th century, Ife's influence began to spread, but the city never quite lost its air of gentle mystery. As twilight deepens, you hear the tap-tap of a potter's tools and catch the aroma of roasting yam and sweet smoke. You see a boy, maybe 9 years old, setting a carved figurine on a stone, whispering a prayer for wisdom. You swear the statue's smile gets a little wider. So, in Ife, the city of origins, you realize that some legends live not in grand monuments, but in the faces, smiles, and quiet moments of creativity echoes kept alive as long as people care enough to tell a story, or to pause in the middle of the path and wonder, who made this, and why am I here? The trail flows west, into the thick heat of the Lagos hinterland, where rainforest breathes out fog and the soil feels ancient enough to vibrate under your sandals. Here rises Benin City, once the dazzling urban center of the Edo people, and a city feared, envied, and occasionally misunderstood by the would-be conquerors of the world. For almost 1,000 years, Benin City hummed with life behind its legendary earthworks. Mainstream historians list its city walls as one of the greatest feats of pre-modern engineering. In fact, the Guinness Book of World Records once dubbed Benin's moat system the world's largest man-made earthwork, longer than even China's Great Wall, though, without #friendly tourists. Try explaining that at a dinner party and watch everyone squint. As you walk, dense canopies drip rain onto your neck, and you spot lines of ochre ramparts rising through the underbrush. Each morning, city dwellers swept clay streets, straight as ruler marks. You pass the Great Palace, a sprawl of courtyards and shiny bronze plaques, where the Oba Benins king once held court decked in coral beads and, for special occasions, an outrageously high hat. Seriously, if hats could win battles, Benin would never have been conquered. Inside the palace, you overhear rituals as priests drum out blessings, sacrificing weight for Ita chicken and some palm oil, old-school style. Among the bronzes, sharp-eyed figures record centuries of court intrigue. The Brits, on their world tour of borrowed treasures, took hundreds of these plaques. Museums still squabble over whether to return them. Historians argue, did the Benin bronzes serve as pure historical record, or did artists slip in political satire as a clever dig at their royal bosses? Fringe theorists love to claim the patterns on some plaques are secret maps to hidden chambers. No one's found one, unless you count the time a city councilman fell through a rotting plank. But urban legends die hard. Benin's urban planning was strict teach, street, trade quarter, and garden mapped by elders. Clans ran artisan guilds, ironworking, ivory, the royal leopard hunters. You wonder for a second if leopard fur would make a great sleep mask. But if the Oba caught you, let's just say you'd want a fast getaway. Night falls. The air smells of rain, wood smoke, and stew. Young warriors share ghost stories. A grandmother teaches kids how to carve ivory combs. You see the city still murmuring beneath modern Beninet's old magic undiminished, its mysteries cloaked, but not long forgotten. A child tosses a pebble, and you angle your head. Is that the ghost of a drum you hear, or just your own heartbeat echoing across the centuries? Westward you wander, into the wind-swept cliffs of southern Mauritania, where ridges rise like sleeping dragons against the cobalt sky. Out here, half lost in rock and sand, sits the ancient city of Kumbi Salete, pulse of the mighty Ghana Empire. No relation to your present-day Ganathis, was a vast kingdom of camels, kings, and gold, built a millennium before Ghana moved down the map. You arrive as dawn gilds the ruined sunlight, sifting through crumbled stone. Kumbi Saleh, at its peak in the 11th century, juggled thousands of residents, 2 royal palaces, and markets rumbling with Berber, Wangara, and even distant Arabic tongues. Picture dazzling markets, thick with gold dust and salt, where travelers swapped silk from the east for fresh slabs of hippo meat, to each their own taste in fine dining. Mainstream fact. The Ghana Empire was so rich that Muslim writers said the king owned gigantic nuggets of gold. Report claimed he sat on a throne of solid gold, staring down at subjects who sprinkled golden dust in their hair before royal audiences. Honestly, peak luxury hair care, but you probably shouldn't try that if you're worried about split ends. Kumbi Saleh itself was split. On one side, the king's sacred precincts. On the other, a trading town buzzing with foreign merchants, languages layered thicker than morning fog. Archaeologists debate, was the city's dual layout a move to keep merchant drama far from royal Isar? Was it the world's first zoning ordinance? Some say local stories of magical talking stones point to a power struggle between royal priests and secular merchants. The quirky bit? In Kumbi Saleh, it said the king spoke only through a chorus of pages, each repeating his words in a scrambled telephone game. If you dream up a royal decree, imagine every vital law filtered through a battalion of medieval hype meno direct comments. Just wisdom that sounded cooler with every retelling. Fringe tales. Some locals whisper about a lost chamber of fire, lit by unquenchable lamps. Any truth? No torches survived, but that doesn't stop lively debates with every new discovery. You crunch through gravel, peer at crumbling cisterns, and feel the splay of sun as night falls while the ghosts of ancient kings watch, likely gossiping and critiquing your travel shoes from their thrones. With the taste of desert air still lingering, your dream path veers further west, across faded savanna, toward the walls of ancient Kumbi Saleh's legendary neighbor, Walata. Born on the shifting edge of the Sahara, this city was both a sanctuary and stubborn survivor for caravans cresting the dunes, their loads swaying with salt, gold, and occasionally a pet monkey or two. Walata, or Owalata, began as a small Berber town in the 11th century, but hit its stride when Mali's empire cast a long shadow in the 13th and 14th centuries. The city's slender, winding streets are a study in survival homes, pressed shoulder to shoulder, walls painted in salmon pinks and ochres, the slick mud packed to keep out sand and jealous neighbors. It's like a maze designed by someone who had watched one too many ant colonies. At its peak, Walata's scholars taught logic, rhetoric, and lawmaking at a northern outpost for the world's greatest libraries. Writing obsessed, this City One merchant store is still etched with a centuries-old poem about the advantages of punctuality. Let's be honest, you'd need a few motivational verses yourself to stroll the Sahara for a living. A mainstream fact. Walata's mosques and schools were famed for architectural calligraphy, exquisitely painted decorations where script itself becomes the building's ornament. Some say the city's stonemasons slipped coded messages into the mortar. An early explorer claimed to have unscrambled a recipe for chickpea stew, though most historians remain unconvinced. Ornate doors, painted with swirling talismans, served as both status symbols and forms of magical alarm. Touch the wrong one, locked out by genie before it was cool. One quirky tale? Local legend claims the town's most beautiful daughter fell in love with a passing poet who left behind a locked chest, openable only if you could write a poem about the town's spirit and make her laugh. Historians still argue whether the poet ever returned, but you can always spot a hopeful soul trying their luck with pen and paper. By dusk, you hear the wind sigh in the narrow alleys. Children recite tongue twisters in time with the call to prayer, and elders tell stories of vanished rivers and libraries swallowed by the sand. You tuck a fragment of a painted tile in your pocket, stepping lightly, whispering thanks that Walata survived despite all odds, a beacon that flashes still when the desert tries to erase the past. Shifting south again, you find yourself wading through the thick, sweet air of the Sahel, through scatterings of acacia and open woodland. The city of Gao itself, both a borderland and a kind of ancient boom town, waits for you at the bend of the Niger River, still shimmering with heat like an oven left on too long. Gao was once the powerhouse of the Songhai Empire, bursting into true splendor in the 15th and 16th centuries. Its roots reach centuries further back. The city's heart, spanning muddy neighborhoods, royal tombs, and a legendary palace built of stone and baked brick, was home to kings who claimed descent from both local heroes and Islamic visionaries. A fact most agree on. Gao was the launchpad for Askia Muhammad I, one of West Africa's most legendary rulers. He reformed the law, set up networks for merchants and scholars, and commissioned mosque renovations before it was trendy. One quirky story claims Askia was so obsessed with gold that when he constructed his tomb, he ordered a hidden chamber filled with gold leaf. Today, metal detectors just find rusty door hinges, so history leaves that puzzle open. Salt from the Sahara, ivory and gold from the south, and horses from everywhere else thundered through Gao's docks. The city was like a social media hub, everybody checking in, flexing their status, hustling for the next connection. Scholars argue whether Gao's dominance was due to military power, its legendary river navy, or just outlandishly good PR. Clever bards made sure stories of Songhais might reach every marketplace, cupbearer, and fishmonger. Unique among old cities, Gao had both a Muslim quarter and older animist precincts, sometimes peaceful, sometimes like a very awkward family reunion. Ask a guard for directions, and you might be pointed to a shrine where spirits, not saints, hold sway even today. You walk a causeway lined with baobabs, tracing faded graffiti. The sun beats down, pounding dust into your sandals, but echoes of old glory shimmer just ahead. As day yawns to close, you can almost hear merchants shouting, deals struck with a handshake or, truth be told, a wink and a sly flick of gold dust. Your sandals slap against smoother stone as you drift to the next marvel, Great Zimbabwe. Unlike most cities so far, this one rises out of green foothills, its walls looping and blending right into nature, as if the world manufactured it just to wow future drone photographers. This city, built between the 11th and 15th centuries, stands out for its jaw-dropping architecture. No mortar was used, just carefully carved granite blocks stacked by hand, interlocking so tight even a modern carpenter would shed a tear. If you try to replicate the technique, you'll quickly earn respect for ancient calluses. A mainstream fact: Great Zimbabwe was once home to some 18,000 people and may have served as a capital for the kingdom that gave modern Zimbabwe its name. The Great Enclosure, a stone ellipse wider than a football field, held royal ceremonies, cattle, and, if gossipy explorers are to be believed, occasional talent shows for dancers and comedians. Fringe interpretations? Early European explorers, so blinkered by their own biases, were convinced it couldn't be native African. Some even blamed everyone from Phoenicians to ancient astronauts, apparently refusing to believe solid engineering and artistry had local origins. Historians, thankfully, now celebrate the Bantu-speaking peoples who lived and thrived here. There's still a lively debate about the purpose of Great Zimbabwe's mysterious conical towers. Were they granaries, royal tombs, or me personal favorite early wizard towers stocked with spell scrolls? Or perhaps just top-notch beer? The answer still slips through our fingers. You hear the chorus of insects and distant laughter as dusk falls. Crickets fill the silence. The moon makes the granite shimmer. And you realize that sometimes the greatest monuments don't need gold or fame, they just need to survive. From granite to green, you wind east, past rolling hills and thickets of mopane trees, until you catch sight of the crooked skyline belonging to Mapungubwe. Set atop a solitary rock between the Limpopo and Shashi rivers, this city feels hidden for a reason. Like some clever ancestor dropped the kingdom just out of reach for treasure hunters. Mapungubwe thrived around the 11th to 13th centuries, a royal seat as mysterious as it was influential. Step lightly as you climb the hill. The whoop of an owl means you're not alone. Here, kings once reigned atop the summit, separate from common folk in an era where separation between rulers and ruled was literally carved into the landscape. A fact to bank on. Mapungubwe's golden rhino figurine, unearthed in the 20th century, is a national icon, an exquisite piece so small you could hide it in your backpack, though you shouldn't try. The gold workshops here churned out tiny treasures hundreds of years before anyone in Europe thought Zimbabwe was more than a hunch on a map. Fringe tidbit? Some locals whisper that tunnels run from Mapungubwe's summit to the riverbanks, built to hide royal secrets or possibly serve as kingly escape routes when in-laws visited. Researchers still debate if these were ever more than drainage ditches, but the secret passage stream refuses to die. Mapungubwe's residents were traders above all, their beads crossing thousands of miles to Egypt, China, and maybe even India. Cattle grazed outside, markets swarmed inside, and the air always hung heavy with opportunity. The threat of a packed commute up a steep slope. As dusk washes the rock golden, you imagine the ancient king overseeing ceremonies in moonlight, elephant spirits trailing behind every dancer, and the distant call of drums reminders that power, here, was grounded in the land and alive in every legend. Your path now twists through dense forest as the Congo River's low song draws you forward. Amid thick jungle and clinging mists, you stumble on the Kingdom of Congo, a civilization whose influence spanned from the equator to the mouth of the Atlantic Ocean. City here means more than stone. Think vast networks, capital cities like Mbanza, Congo, and villages joined by blood, trade, and royal will. At its core, Mbanza, Congo, the city of stone, rises out of the woods, sharp-edged walls and regal plazas glinting with a mix of local genius and echoes of Portuguese design after the 15th century. That is. Mainstream historians say Congo's power peaked from the 14th to 17th centuries. The reigning king, called the Mani Congo, once summoned vassals from regions so far-flung that it'd make modern cell phone plans blush. A quirky fringe fact. One Portuguese diplomat was so bewitched by Congo's music that he returned home, tried to imitate the rhythms, and inadvertently sparked a brief court craze for jazzy church hymns. Records don't mention whether anyone could actually dance to them. Debate still swirls over whether Congo's quick adoption of Christianity was savvy politics, spiritual revolution, or just a means of scoring access to imported silk and muskets. Whatever the motive, locals blended new beliefs with older rituals, making saints out of ancestors and baptizing children with water hauled from sacred jungle springs. Today, the remains of Congo cities thrum underfoot, half buried under root and rain, but the old royal road once lined with musicians, priests, and mango sellers still peeks out in morning light, a memory that refuses to fade. The river bends, and with it your path toward mysterious Aksum, the kingdom that bridged Africa and Arabia, and still lingers in stone tablets half smothered by weeds. You breathe the dry air of northern Ethiopia, highlands rising all around, as the tips of obelisks catch the dawn. sending shadows across fields that once fed a mighty empire. Axum's heart was its capital, a vibrant trading city teeming with sculptors, priests, and traveling merchants who could recite the taste of saffron and the price of Roman glass in a single breath. The city's signature? Towering granite stellions standing more than 20 meters high, carved with crosshatch patterns still waiting to be decoded by over-eager codebreakers. A mainstream gem, Axum minted its own gold coins, displaying kings in intricate profile, a first in sub-Saharan Africa. Traders from Byzantium and India haggled over frankincense, while ships docked at Adulis, Axum's ancient port. Fun fact: dregs of imported wine have been found on some city flagstones, the ancient equivalent of empty coffee cups collecting in your car. One offbeat tradition claims Axum is where the Ark of the Covenant came to rest, which, if true, means you should step extra carefully near the old churches. Historians passionately argue over the Ark's fate. Some say it's hidden in a local chapel. Others roll their eyes. But every guidebook still circles the site in red. Your shoes scuff ancient thresholds. Wild mint scents swirl under your nose. And as you watch priests in white robes file by, you realize that Axum's mysteries, be they religious, royal, or practicalaire, shaded by millennia, always just out of reach, always ready to whisper back if you pause to listen. You've crossed Nile, jungle, and sand, and now your steps quiet as you find yourself standing at the shores of ancient Carthage, of Africa's most storied centers, forever blurring the boundaries between myth, memory, and Mediterranean drama. Carthage was a city that outroamed Rome for a minute, a superpower built on Phoenician cunning and a little bit of chaos. A walk through the old port's crescent reveals the famous circular harbor, so meticulously engineered. It once held hundreds of ships and supposedly let generals practice synchronized swimming maneuvers. Possibly with elephants, historians are still unconvinced. By the time a salty breeze gusts through city streets, you catch flashes of mosaic tile, stray olive pits crunching underfoot, and vendors hawking purple dye extracted from sea snails. And so expensive you could pay off all your parking tickets if you just time-traveled with a thimbleful. A mainstream anchor, Carthage at its height, traded tin, silver, and wheat for Rome's finest wine. Philosophers, poets, and statesmen once wandered its shaded villas. Yet it was war that wrote Carthage's mangiest epic, the Three Punic Wars, ending with the Romans burning the city down, sowing the fields with salt, and, supposedly, cackling with glee, though modern scholars quietly debate whether the salt part is just sour victory propaganda. A fringe tidbit whispers that Carthage's lost holy books held the secret to raising storms at sea, which sounds like a great plot for your next daydream. There's laughter in the wind at Carthage's fallen walls, and, as sunset tints the bay, you sense the city's pride, the stubborn joy of those who survived, rebuilt, and kept spinning stories far too wild to ever really die. Your final steps wander further east, to the bustling, spice-laden Swahili coast where forest meets ocean and stone towns drowse under ceiling fans, listening to the soft slap of tides. Kilwa Kisiwani, once the crown jewel of this shore, was the Zanzibar before Zanzibar, its coral palaces shimmering against the Indian Ocean well before most of Europe realized you could survive the humidity. Kilwa rose between the 9th and 16th centuries, famous for its coral stone buildings, labyrinthine streets, and markets stacked deep with Persian ceramics, Chinese porcelain, and famously cloth so finely woven even queens wrote fan mail. Historian consensus: Kilwa's reach stretched across the whole Swahili coast, knitting African, Arab, Persian, and Indian traders into a surprising harmony of cultures. Your feet echo on palace steps. The air smells of cloves and distant diesel. And in hidden courtyards, palm wine flows as storytellers retell journeys over the sea. Every street is a memory pressed in coral. Houses with thick wooden doors carved in local riddles. Coins marked by sultans whose family trees tangle with every port. A unique debate. Scholars still argue how much of Kilwa's wealth came from gold mining in Zimbabwe versus clever middleman tactics. The locals' tradition claims a clever sultan once negotiated so hard, his trading partners left their shoes out of respect and then had to walk barefoot home. Some fringe tales say undersea tunnels connect Kilwa's oldest ruins to distant islets, possibly to move goods, possibly so bold lovers could disappear from curfew. You glimpse a fishing skiff. The moon ripples on pearl-white sand, and every legend stirs one more time because some cities are stories disguised as stone, still wide awake on the tide. Now, as this journey draws to its close, you meander through the dim corridors of memory, the glow of long-gone fires and wind-lashed city gates. Each city, whether built of mud, stone, coral, or hopes, has left quiet echoes, veiled songs, a glint of gold, a scent of roasting grain, or laughter beneath the oldest baobab. You traveled Kerma's riverbanks, felt the silt of the Nile, and walked the mud streets of Jenne in festival joy. You ducked the market goats of Benin, warily-eyed royal hats, and puzzled at the tight fit of Zimbabwe's stones. You pressed your ear to the Congo jungle, traced the stele of Aksum, and squinted at Carthage's purple dye under a setting sun. Old fact, quirky rumor, open debates the threads that tie these lost cities aren't just the mystery, but the impossible persistence of memory. The world's sand and soil shift, but legends only drift when we stop retelling them. If you listen just a second longer, you might pick up the faintest hum of those library scribes sneaking a joke into the margins, or the priest in Ife sighing over the best way to improve a ritual mask. There's a part of these cities that lives as long as you do, maybe longer. You reached the Swahili coast, the home of blended music and scent, and every stepeach vanished city recalled that what's lost is sometimes simply waiting for someone new to ask its name. You carry all these fragments back to waking life now, heavier with story, lighter with wonder, and maybe, just maybe, with a sly urge to tell someone else what you found beneath the stones. Now it's time to let the dust settle. The echoes of ancient footsteps fade softly into the hush beneath your eyelids. You feel the gentle hush of the savannah, the lilt of river water somewhere far on the edge of sleep, and all at once, the restlessness inside you begins to ebb away. Each echo, each golden glint of lost city, smooths out under the blanket of night, story threads weaving themselves gently into dreams. You're warm now, safe in your own quiet bed, the whispers of Africa's ancient cities, slowing, softening. Imagine the last lantern winking out on a crumbling wall. Fireflies tumble upward, drifting with the hush of history and the comfort of being at home, right where you belong. Let every question rest. Just for a while, sleep holds its own kind of answers. As you drift deeper, picture the world at peace. Mysteries waiting patiently for tomorrow's sun. The soft current of river, forest, and hidden stone all breathing lullabies just for you. You are safe, wrapped in a 1,000-year-old calm. Hearts long gone beat slow and steady, shaping their songs into moonlit reassurance. Let your breath deepen. Let the world dim even further. Let all the stories find their quiet edge, then slip past, leaving a gentle hush to settle in your room. End of story. Have a sweet dreams.